And we're live. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Good evening, John. Well, it's what, 5 o'clock for you over there in good old Perth. It's
Yep, 5 o'clock
seven
here in
o'clock.
Perth, and
Oh,
and
freezing over here.
7 o'clock
Freezing.
in nice chilly Melbourne for you.
Oh, it's so cold. It's so cold. Yeah, but anyway, it's all good. The heater's on. The log fire's on, so that's good.
It's cool. Well, welcome everybody, wherever you're coming in from Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or Twitter. We're streaming to 4 different platforms. In fact, that's what we're meant to be doing. So we'll see. We'll see how many people turn up, Steve. We'll see if we get anyone. But at least, if you're watching on the replay, just put hashtag replay into the comments on whatever platform you're on. Just hashtag replay. Let us know where you're watching from. Maybe you're watching from London. Maybe you're watching on the replay in America because it's the middle of the night over there. Maybe you're in New Zealand this evening and settling down to kind of enjoy us on one of the platforms before you go to bed. Maybe you're around Australia. Maybe you're up there in Singapore, or some of my friends in South Africa. I'm sure are going to tune in because it's a beautiful 11 a.m. in Joburg at the moment, so pretty easy for them to tune in. But Steve, great to have you. We're going to be talking about avoiding burnout in ministry. And we have promised to reveal burnout secrets. We're going to reveal our secrets to avoiding burnout. And we're not going to start with the usual, hey, let's spend 5 minutes, tell us what you've done, who you are. I want to dive into the deep end of the pool. And you'll discover who we are and our backgrounds as we go along and share our story. And feel free to put in some comments. And if you've got some questions, throw them into the comment area, and happy to interact with you as we go along. Steve, I know you went through a major burnout some years ago and have come out the other side of it. What really triggered you to know, I think I'm in trouble? I think I'm not doing well at the moment. What
Yeah,
was the thing that really popped for you?
yeah. It was actually like I knew I was in trouble on a specific day when a doctor in our church came to see me about a church matter. And it wasn't anything major. In fact, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what she came to see me about. Sort of 8.5 years ago, and she came in and I closed the door and we sat down, and she said, "How you going, Steve?" And I burst into tears, and I just
Oh,
wept like a baby, and I couldn't get control of my emotions. And she was patient, and we got to the end, and I said, "I don't know what's going on. I'm just struggling." And I started to talk about the fact I wasn't sleeping, that I was losing control of my emotions. Everything was a problem to me. I was irritated. Everyone was letting me down. And I just was
mm,
hating it. And I had at that point been a full-time church pastor for more than 20 years, and I loved it. I mean, it's just all I've ever wanted to do all my life. And
yeah.
and so it was a bizarre place for me to be in. And so that was the really obvious day. Like, I just lost the plot in front of somebody. And I wonder whether I just felt safe because she was a medical doctor. I knew of her and her husband. He was chaplain at the
Mm,
school that we were part of with the church. They were really stellar people. And I think
yep.
maybe, I don't know, maybe I just thought, I need help. Like, I knew I needed help, but I didn't know how to get there. And I think too, John, because I'd helped a lot of people pre me having my burnout, I was probably in denial that such a thing would happen to me. It's everybody else. It certainly wasn't going to happen to me, because I was probably in the best ministry season of my life, to be honest.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so, this was the last thing that was going to be on my radar. And yeah, there I was. It all came crashing down, as they say.
Wow. So everything's kind of booming around you, going well, but you yourself are just in a bit of despair or bit of exhaustion, whatever you'd call it.
Yeah, yeah, but it was more than that. It wasn't just being tired. I didn't
Mm,
have I couldn't regulate. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept getting trapped in a circular negative thinking. I was
yep.
replaying everything that went wrong ever. It was really hard. I mean, at the time, I was a husband. I was a dad of 3 beautiful girls. I was senior minister of a great church. I was on the national executive for our movement. I was traveling the world doing
Wow.
things that I loved. I was doing my doctorate. I mean, it was busy. Life was amazing. All of things that seemed to be success on the outside were happening, but internally, yeah, things were just really falling apart. So, yeah, that was the day that I just knew I'm in trouble. And so, yeah,
Too much.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
But what about
I
you,
went through
John?
my
We
own.
can jump
Sorry,
from
go on.
me to you. Yeah, I was just thinking with you and your burnout, but you had a part of yours, if I remember correctly, that was probably more accurately described as depression, as well as the
Yeah.
fact that your body was struggling.
Yeah. I ended up into this. It's about well, it's 27 years ago now. I remember dates and years for some weird reason. Pure gift. I don't have to think about it, but I can go back to 1997, and I went into a real dark place of depression, primarily because of a relationship breakdown with a key mentor in my life, someone who was very significant and influential in my development as a pastor and a minister. And I'd been pastoring probably about 15 years by this time, and we were in a major building program. And this relationship just went horribly wrong, terribly wrong, and had the potential to damage our church in a very destructive way. And I just couldn't see a way out of it. And
Wow.
I think I think I would call it more depression than burnout. But I think it's interesting what causes you to go into those seasons. And it lasted about 15 months. And to be honest with you, really got me so down that I started to contemplate how I could end my life. I started to have those sort of
Wow.
level of darkness that I thought, I can't see a way out. And depression is like that, isn't it? It's like a black hole, and you can't see the way out, the path out. It's like the path has stopped, and all you've got in front of you is darkness and blackness. And I think back now, if I'd yielded to those tempting thoughts of, ending my life, ending my pain, but since then I've had four grandsons. Did
Yeah.
another 15 years of pastoring, and last 12 years been consulting, coaching with churches around the world. So I think, I would have missed out on 27 years of fabulous
Yeah.
family time and
Yeah.
ministry opportunities as well that I would have robbed myself and
Yeah.
people of. So you think, I always think that even when you run out of hope, and you can run out of hope, you just can't see any reason to go on. You can still get through. You can still get to the other side. And I think you and I probably, combined 70 years of ministry experience here. Both of you and I are great testimonies of the fact that you can come through a horrendous
Totally.
burnout, a horrendous depression time, and come out the other side actually healthy.
Yeah. I
Um,
think I remember for me, I had a few overwhelming emotions for quite some time, and they even now, eight and a
right.
half years later, I have to be mindful of them. Just that
Yep.
incredible sense of failure, of just failing
Wow.
at ministry and
Yep.
not getting there. I felt shame that I'd let people down, let my
Hmm.
family down, and all of that, and I just really struggled with that, and it's probably in that season that I had to. I definitely discovered the truth and the meaning of our term, a theology of suffering. Because up until
Right.
then, I
Yep.
was a great Pentecostal preacher. Then, we just believe and it all happens and God will fix it and just pray more, pray longer, everything's going to be okay. And while we know there's a truth to that side, there's also the other side, and so that was very confronting for me. But I was absolutely convinced that there was no future for me. And while
Hmm.
I don't ever recall wanting to jump off a cliff, um, I was just absolutely convinced that was it. Like, that
Wow.
was it for me. And, yeah, it's a frightening place. It's a really frightening place. And, people would say, "You gotta keep pressing into God and trusting God." And I'd be like, "God, I mean, I know He's there, but I know I'm meant to have all this faith, but I don't have enough faith to blow out a candle, never alone believe for anything." And
It's
thankfully, I had people
interesting,
around me
isn't
that,
it?
yeah, people believed for me, John. I think that's what I
Yeah.
discovered.
Yeah.
People believed for me because I
And I
struggled.
think it's interesting the different emotions you have. You mentioned guilt and shame as being primary emotions and responses. For me, it was I didn't feel that as much as I felt despair, just complete and utter despair. I don't have an answer, and I'm an achievement type person. Give me a problem, I'll find a solution. That's the way I'm wired,
Yeah,
personality wise. And to feel like I don't have a solution for this, I don't see a way out. My overriding feeling was, well, it's hopeless. It's I
yeah,
would say I'd call it despair more than that. And it's interesting that burnout, depression can produce different responses in us. I think according to our circumstances, our personality, our wiring. Now, today we want to share some burnout prevention secrets. So I think, Steve, let's tag team here. Why don't you
okay.
share one thing that really helped you turn the corner in terms of coming out of burnout? And maybe
Yeah.
it's also something that can help prevent burnout as well. You go first.
Um, okay. The first one is the medical profession,
Okay.
and
Wow.
I had to come to terms with that. Again, I was in such a great season of ministry that I was seeing miracles everywhere I was going. Everything was happening for me. It was like it was just amazing season, and yet I couldn't get there in my own life, and I needed my doctor, and I needed my psychologist, and I needed the counselors and the coaches to get me through some of those really um, just horrible, horrible months that I couldn't see a future. I just couldn't. And I ended up working with my psychologist for 6 years. Um,
Hmm.
he was a believer, not that I chose him for that reason, but he was recommended to me from that doctor that came to see me. He's a Uniting Church active member all of his life and still is today. Um, and so I I found that with my GP, medication, psychology, that those
Hmm.
things were essential for me to not only come out, but I think perhaps come out quicker than maybe some. I know when I went into a lot of my ministry friends were going, you're probably out for 5 years by the time you get through this and recover. And 5 years felt like five lifetimes away, like, what do you mean 5 years? Just give me a holiday for 2 weeks and I'll be okay. And it just wasn't the case. So that was, I would say, step number one. And when I teach on this to people, I say, the first thing I suggest to you, my friend, is tomorrow, go and see your GP.
Wow.
Get it recorded, get it on their computer. You never know when you might need it, when work cover might need it, what all those things that could happen in the future um, might happen. And it gives you an anchor point. It gives you a starting point with a medical professional. And so the first thing that I would absolutely put down that helped me come out the other side was I
Hmm.
realized I needed professional help and I
Yep.
sought it. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
What about you, John?
Awesome. For me, I would say my number one thing that was the turning point, and something I should have done earlier, was I finally talked to Diane about how dark my thoughts were about the
Um,
depression, despair. She knew I wasn't well. We both knew I wasn't well and operating at my normal level of energy and achievement. However, I hadn't really told her about how dark it was, and I left that too late in some ways. And I remember getting dressed one day. I'd go to the office. I'm ready to go to work. Head out the door, and I couldn't get out the door. I just couldn't face it. And I remember sitting down at our little meals table area and just sobbing my heart out while Diane's just standing next to me, just consoling me. And I sobbed out just how bad I was in terms of despair, depression,
yeah,
wanting to finish my life, and that pouring that out just lifted the veil and brought light into the darkness.
yeah,
And of course, she then took some really good action in terms of getting support around me. But I think it's interesting. Both of our first secrets, if you like, is get some help. Talk to someone. Go
yeah,
go to the medical professionals. Talk to your spouse. Talk to someone who loves you and will hold a confidence, and who will probably also be strong enough to say to you, "We need to do something right now." Then that might be going to the doctor. That might be
yeah,
even going with them to the doctor. because
That's right.
I think if I'd talked to Diane earlier, I think it would have, in fact, I know it would have helped if I'd gone, you know what, I shouldn't hold all this inside. I'm trying to work through it myself and
Yeah.
didn't yield to that temptation to escape the pain. But I think if I'd sat down early and said, look, I've got these crazy thoughts, it's stupid, I should not have these thoughts, too much to live for. So, yeah, that's interesting that, and we haven't kind of compared notes on what we're going to
No, not at
share on our
all.
secrets, but it's
No.
interesting that both of us have the secret of talk to someone, get some help, get the best
Yeah.
help that you
I remember, John, it's
possibly
interesting
can.
when you talk about these things, you go back there a bit. And so I hope I don't
Yeah,
trigger
totally.
bad things for you and for me, to be honest. But
No, I'm
I
good.
when you started talking it, I went right back into the psychologist room, and I remember it was the third session I had with him. And I said to
Wow.
doctor, and I took Naomi, first time she'd come with me. And I was talking with Dr. Ivan, and I said, I'm stuck, like I'm trapped. I can't get out. I'm unsafe. I'm trapped. And I
Mm.
just never forgot. Naomi said, "No, you're not. We can go tomorrow. We can do
Wow.
whatever you need. You can do we
Wow.
whatever you need. We can do. You're not trapped, babe."
Wow.
Oh, give me $1,000,000 right then. You know what I mean? Like that was just one of
Relief.
those moments of shifting where my wife, who knew me better than anybody, could look in and go, "No, no, no. We can go. We can go this way." And you talk about talking to people. Um, I had 6 people that I connected with when this all started, and I
Mm.
contacted 6 Christian friends from 3 different denominations, and I just said, I'm in a bad way. I'm going to come out of ministry
Mm.
for 6 months at least, and I don't know how I'm going to get through. Can you please stick with me? And yeah, that was amazing. And then I had 2 other people come on um, that not only proved to be incredible, but here we are 8.5 years later, and they're both still with me, which is yourself, John, and
Mm.
Pastor Vic Simpson.
Yeah.
And so those people became instrumental to my recovery, one of my secrets.
Mm.
And really interesting because you got different personalities. Well, I just remember now, one of the guys every week, clearly it was in his calendar, sent me a scripture. Just every week, sent me a scripture by
Every
text.
week.
Every week without fail, same day.
Wow.
I knew it was in
Wow.
his calendar.
So
Another
is this
one,
your
he would ring me.
your number two secret is kind of getting a coalition of friends around you of because you
Yeah,
obviously
let's go with that.
I
Yeah,
mean this is
let's
different
make
to the medical thing.
yeah, take us great. Okay, let's go point 2. Who's in your corner?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you
Great.
said before, who will hold your confidences. You
Yeah.
can get pretty raw, and the fact is, many hands are not safe. They're just not. And even in the church world, and even in the pastor's world, the conversations, the gossip, the around the table, did you hear? Did you know? All that stuff happens. It's real. And so you've got to be really, really wise to go, who can hold my pain safely?
Mm. Yeah.
Not that I want them to massage my pain. I want them to accept my pain and then help me come through the pain. But I had to be really careful about that. So I asked these people to help me, and
Mm.
they were key as well to my recovery.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
And what about you? Did you have, like you said before, you got the right people around you? Is that a similar story for you, or?
Um, look, if I had to pick my second secret, I'll go on a different tack. I
Yeah.
totally had people around me. I totally agree with that one. I think my number two was actually a practice that I did in prayer, and this sounds super spiritual when I start talking about it, but trust me, once time I finish the story, you'll know it's not super spiritual. I I found that I've always had a good habit of prayer. Morning prayer has been my habit for decades. So get up in the morning, have coffee, have prayer, have some Bible. And I found through these 15 months that my prayer life was abysmal and pathetic, yet it was a routine and a habit I refused to give up. So I would just go and basically sit
Wow.
in my study, which is my prayer place, and just sit there before the Lord and say, not much, and this went on for over a year. Wouldn't say much at all. Certainly wouldn't pray for a lot of things or a lot of people. I would, the only prayer I really would get out, I reckon, for about a year was, Lord, can you please help me? Was about it.
Yeah.
But I would
Yeah.
sit there in silence, generally, in silence, and maybe put on some worship music, maybe not, see how I felt. But I'd kind of do my, this sounds terrible, but I'd do my duty, my habit,
Yeah.
my routine.
Yeah.
I just go, I have to keep coming back to Jesus because I can't see any other solution. And
Yeah.
I think that habit, which I really think is an important habit just to continue in your life, is so vital that I actually found that through that habit, I actually stayed in tune with the Lord. And then one morning I had this amazing experience where I had a vision just in my mind, not an open-eyed thing or anything, or not John the Apostle or anything at Revelation, but I had this vision of the Lord just, this hand coming down out of heaven and grabbing me by my shirt, and my arms and legs are dangling like a rag doll. And I know it's me. I know it's the hand of God reaching down, holding me, and I'm not holding on to the Lord. He's holding me. And just felt the Holy Spirit say, you can let go, but I never will.
Wow.
And it was in that moment that I thought, oh my goodness, that vision is still with me 27 years later, that
Wow.
even though I was pathetically abysmal in my prayer life, the Lord was saying, I'm not letting go of you at all. I'm hanging on to you completely and
Wow.
utterly.
That's amazing, John. For me, if I could add a secret 3, I
Yeah,
started
totally. Yeah.
the practice and discipline of walk, ponder, pray. And it was just a
Oh, I
term I
remember
came
that.
up,
Yes.
and I would walk every day without fail, no matter what. And so the first 2 years I did 1,500 kilometers plus. So I was walking every day without fail, and I would ponder. And in the first months, I would go down the worst rabbit holes. I would relive every bad thing that ever happened to me. And then my prayer was like you, was nothing more than, God, please just let me get through one more day. But as time went on, I noticed that the pondering was more about, could there be a future? And the prayer was more about things in the future. God, I wonder whether I could be
Mm.
of use. I wonder whether there's other people who's been through this that I could help. Like I just noticed there was that change. And interesting enough, because preparing for some of the webinars that I'm doing on burnout, I was going back through my journal, because I also journaled through this whole time, which is not a practice for me, but I did it for 5 years. And I journaled it, and in my journal, it was almost to the week 6-month mark. I woke up in the morning and I said to Naomi, something shifted. Something shifted. I'm going to be okay. Something has shifted. I feel different. And it was like I was carrying such a heavy weight of failure and shame and pain and emotion, that it was like that coat lifted off me, and all of a sudden I felt like a different person. And from then on, I would say my recovery accelerated, just absolutely accelerated from that point on. But yeah, it was a moment in God. It's the only way I can describe it. God
Yeah.
came into that moment, and I knew when I woke up that I don't know what happened overnight,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
in a moment, something shifted in my life, and I'm thankful that God did a divine work to shift things. And so, yeah.
You know what? I had a similar experience. I at the end of the 15 months, I went on a ministry trip to New Zealand, which is the place. Even though I'm Australian, I got born again in Auckland, and I
Wow.
went on a ministry trip to New Zealand, which was significant for me. 25 years after coming to Christ, it was a real amazing trip and a kind of nostalgic journey
Yeah.
of my born again birthplace. And fascinatingly, similar to you, when the plane landed back in Perth, don't ask me what happened or how or why, and I cannot put a figure on it. Same as you, but I knew something had shifted and changed. And I got off that plane and thought, I feel lighter, I feel better. I haven't done anything. No one said anything. It's almost like, okay, that's over now. Next stage. It was weird, and I think it's helpful in some ways. If I can say to people who are watching, listening today or on replay, I think it's interesting that for both you and I, Steve, there are certain secrets that we've done, like the medical profession, talking to your spouse, talking to your friends, getting a coalition of people and support. But there's also this God factor that you and I have found, that there's a bit of
Yeah.
a secret. There's some stuff that's left up to the Lord to intervene in our lives, because our faith and trust, and we're not super spiritual about this. We've talked about doctors and friends and friendship support and family getting around you. So we don't want to dismiss all that. That's been the foundation of what we share. But I think there's a secret matter here where God says, I will deliver you if you seek me. If you search for me with all my heart, I will answer you. And I think I think we both can say to anyone who's going through some stuff right now of some level of exhaustion, burnout, depression, anxiety, is that continue to trust the Lord. Steve and I are living testimonies of
Yeah.
hang in there, as cliched as it sounds, stay the course, and the Lord will intervene for you. You can trust Him. You can work in your life. And can I say to people out there who are saying, well, it's okay for you, you're at the other side. Yeah, I understand that. I know what it's like to be in the black hole of despair. But fix your eyes on Jesus and have a look at Steve and John, and just recognize that God can step in and do something.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's interesting, John. I found one of the hardest things for me was going to church. In fact, I
Yeah.
I
Wow.
couldn't get to
Wow.
church often.
Yep.
It was we described it, Naomi and I used to talk about it. We described it as we walk in the door and we feel like there's this huge spotlight on us. And there probably wasn't, but everyone seemed happy and everyone was energetic and the music was up and the worship leader was rah, and then the MC was rah, and then the preacher was rah. And I was in so much pain. I couldn't handle the rah and the joy and the energy, and I needed someone just to go, "Mate, you'll be okay for another day. Like, you're gonna be okay." And I
Yeah.
just found it so confronting. And you gotta understand, not only was I a Pentecostal preacher, I was the guy hanging from the chandeliers, like, I wasn't the quiet guy. I I love the three-ring circus. The bigger, the better. I'm so love that stuff, but I couldn't do it. I just was so broken that
Wow.
I couldn't do it. And I think that's the goodness of God again, that I couldn't do anything to get His favor or His
Yeah.
love or His acceptance or His healing, which is
Yeah.
why that moment was so significant for me, because I went to bed one way, I went to sleep one way, and I woke up another.
Yeah. It's
And
amazing.
I had nothing to do with it. It was a divine intervention by
Hmm.
God that I'm forever grateful
It's
with.
cool. Hey, if you're
Yeah,
watching, listening today live, thank you for joining us live. Really appreciate that. Or you're watching on the replay,
yeah,
throw in a hashtag replay comment on whatever platform you're on if you're watching on replay. Look, I want to mention to you a couple of resources that Steve and I can offer to you. And I'm going to try a little bit of the high tech here, Stephen. Let's see what happens. Oh, I think it might even work for us. Here we go. Let me just try this. Oh, there we go. I made it work. Oh, I'm impressed with myself.
well done.
This is Steve's Facebook profile, Steve Morrison. Get on Facebook, and Steve Morrison 961 is his Facebook profile. You got 5,800 followers. My goodness, you're way beating me, man. That's amazing. If you get on Facebook, follow Steve, connect with Steve, and send him a DM. Steve has a brilliant coaching, counseling ministry. Steve is my go-to guy whenever I bump into pastors that I'm consulting with and discover there's burnout, anxiety, depression, or major transition going on. Steve is my number one counselor coach that I recommend to pastors. Go and get some help with Steve. And time and again, Steve delivers brilliant results to pastors, helping them out in so many ways. So hop onto Facebook. I'll see if I can put some links in some of the comments after we've finished here, that you can make it a bit easier for you to connect with Steve. If you don't already follow him on Facebook and Instagram, it's certainly worthwhile. And also I have a book, 27 Ways to Avoid Burnout. If you get on Amazon and just Google 27 Ways to Avoid Burnout, or Google John Finkelde, you'll find my books on Amazon pretty easily there. And there's my book. It's a short book, I only write short books, 60 pages, 27 ways, really practical stuff on avoiding burnout, some preventative stuff, and certainly more than a couple of secrets in that one. Now, Steve, I'm going to try the tech, and I got us back. Look
Look
at
at
that.
that. Well done.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed with myself. We were trialing this before, and it wasn't working very brilliantly, so I'm happy that worked for us. Steve, we've kind of talked a fair bit this evening, and we'll take some questions in a minute. I'll just check all the platforms, see if anyone got any questions. Throw them into the comments, and we're happy to kind of work with any questions you've got or comments as well. Happy to receive any comments, but we have kind of talked about support networks. So how do you think church leaders can cultivate a strong support network around themselves, even if they're really healthy and booming and thriving right now? That season may kind of come to an end. What can church leaders do and pastors do to have a strong support network around them?
Yeah, I would choose some guys that you just know would take a bullet for you. Like you just know they're there for you no matter what, and they've got safe hands, strong hands. I was working with a client just recently last year, a Victorian pastor, great church, been in ministry 30 years, and he, he kept talking to me about this friend of his, and I said, I reckon you need to spend a heap more time with him. He goes, yeah, he's not saved though. He's not a Christian guy. I said, great idea. Go and see him too. And they used to go to the gym together. And the guy was really wise, really kind, non-judgmental. He had no skin in the game. You know what I mean? Like it didn't matter. So it
Yep.
was just a really safe, fun space for him. I reckon those people are worth gold. So I would be choosing some people that you just know you can go to. And the world is such a small place now. You can talk to people in all sorts of places. They don't have to be down the road. I like the fact I had a couple of people on my list I could go and sit in a cafe with. That I liked that, but all the others were not in the state, not even in Victoria. So that would be one thing I'd be looking at. I know, John, that you have always had exceptional prayers, and that you're very
Yeah.
intentional about prayer support. Maybe you could unpack that more for us.
Yeah, Di and I, for over 20 years now, have had a prayer support group of people that we just recruited from our own church, that people who we had a few qualifications. They had to love us, they had to be extremely confidential, and they were people who prayed. That was it. And we get together with them every couple of months and we give them a list of things to pray about, both in our ministry life and personal life. And we told them if they ever broke confidence that they'd be resigning from the group immediately. There would be no second chance for this. Had to be held in confidence, which we've never had to dismiss anyone from the group over the 20 plus years. And we'd get with them and share things and ask them to pray. We now run that through a WhatsApp group. It's a lot easier with the amount of travel I do. So I actually put a request into the group an hour or two ago and say, hey, please pray for the live that we're doing here. So they pray regularly for us. They pray for all various things related to our personal life and our ministry life. And frankly, that has been brilliant for us because and everywhere I go with pastors I'm consulting with, I say, set up a prayer group. Only has to be one or two people. Doesn't have to be. We have about 6 or 7, I think, in the group. We've had, I think, up to 10 at certain times. Doesn't have to be a lot, but it just needs to be people who love you. And I tell them, look, if you get a prophetic word for me, just pray it. Don't tell me. I don't need you to be prophets. I don't need you getting together as a group. Don't get together as a group and pray. That can go a bit strange in churches. Just in your own devotional time, pray for us when you think of us and when we ask for it. That's all I
Wow.
ask. And
That's
we get together every year with them and give a supper to them and chat about what we've been doing, encourage them and so on. So personally, I found that a huge lifter into our own lives and been fabulous. I've checked, Steve. We've got. I can't find anything on Facebook, nothing on YouTube, but there's a bundle of people who've joined us on Instagram, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because we haven't done a live on Instagram. A whole bundle of people have joined. People are saying hi, John and Steve. Simon Spallinger from Switzerland. We've got someone from Switzerland watching us. Love the part about no, you are not stuck. I think that's a great thing that you brought in, Steve, that you're not stuck, you're not trapped. Neighbour of mine is in the early days of burnout. What would you advise me to do? There's a question for you, Steve. I'm going to throw this to you. A neighbour of mine is in the early days of burnout. What would you advise Simon to do?
Yeah, that's great, Simon. I would For me personally, and again, it depends on your friend's personality. But for my personality, I would prefer people to ask me and get around me than be silent and worried about asking me or offending me or upsetting. I would just prefer, "Hey, Steve, are you okay? I've noticed." Hey, what support, even from what we've said tonight, you could ask him, hey, just wondering what support you've got around you. You just seem like you're struggling. Have you seen your doctor? I mean, you can ask all those
Mm,
things that our secrets, John, and suggest some of those, and then to get support to walk alongside him. But I would be checking in way more than you would think. Like, even if it was every
mm,
day, just annoy him, but in a really positive way. And the check-in, by the way, could be a one-line text or a wave over the fence, doesn't matter. But I would be around for a while, and just be really active. Honesty is the best policy. Hey, man, I'm just worried about you. How can I help you? One of the guys for me, Pastor Chris Rowney, who's part of your network, John, and we lived in the same sort of area, half an hour away, and we walked most days together. Often, I would
mm.
walk twice a day, but I would often walk with Pastor Chris because we'd either say nothing or we would talk a bit. Didn't matter.
Hmm.
But that was really special for me. And he always made sure he was available just to go for a bit of a walk with me and a bit of a chat. Man, that stuff's
Wow.
worth gold when you look back. So, a couple of things
Wow.
there I would be doing.
I love it. And I remember a good friend of mine, Greg French, said to me once that if you see someone either angsty with you or in some sort of turmoil, always move towards them, not away from them.
Great.
And
Great advice.
that's fabulous advice. If you see someone struggling, move towards them. And it can be a text, it can be just a reaching out and saying, look, are you all right? I'm not sure if you're okay. And if they brush you off, no problem, but you've made the step towards them, and to let them know, as you said, I'm available whenever you need me. And I think
Yeah.
rather than hang back, that timid hanging back, oh, I'm not sure, I might say the wrong thing. I don't think asking someone, are you really okay, is the wrong thing ever. Even if
Yeah.
they blow up at you, something's wrong.
Yeah, and I would go further, John. And to Simon, my suggestion to you is, and anyone listening, this line of, "Hey, if you need me, just call." No, no,
Right.
you
Yep.
just call. Don't
Yep.
don't put that on the other person. If they're in pain, I guarantee 99% of the time they are not going to call. They're going to be going through
Yep.
all the emotions. They're going to be in self-doubt. They're probably in fear and failure and shame and guilt and worried about what's going on. We need to be the ones that initiate over and over and over and over and over and over again, in
Yep.
that space. So yeah, I would just, going gently, but going with intent to help.
Well, let's
Yeah.
wrap it up, Steve. Let's do our last sort of little piece each. What advice would we give? What do you reckon we would give to a church leader who's been listening to this, watching this, and going, oh, I think I might be in burnout. I think I might be depressed. What's the steps that you think they should take, or maybe even just one step? What advice would you be giving to someone who's listening to this, watching this, and going, actually, I'm a bit more worried about myself than what I was before I watched
Yeah.
the beginning of the video.
Um, I would reach out to you or me or both. Absolutely, I
Mm,
would. We've both walked it. Um, you know, we, uh, I've got many training behind me and degrees and I've got all the knowledge and training. But I actually was a senior minister of a fantastic church, a national executive. I get it. I know the context of pastoring through and through. You know, 30 years in March of next year. I would
mm,
reach out, just send us a DM, or to you, John. I mean, 40 plus years been through the depth. So there's,
mm.
we're a resource right here, right now. The fact they're even on says to me that they've got some awareness. And if we can't help, we will know someone. We'll certainly know how to refer. We'll
Yep.
know who the right person is. So I think that's really important. But the other thing I would do, even if they're not comfortable doing that, is I would go and tell somebody. You said before, get it out of it lifted the veil when you spoke to die. Go
Yep.
and tell someone. The enemy wins in the dark. And when you
Yep.
bring it into the light, it's the first shift. It's the first shift. So I would literally go and tell somebody in the next 24 hours, hey, I'm struggling. Think I need some support and help. Start there.
Yeah, I definitely would echo that. I think reach out to Steve or myself, or someone that you trust, certainly available to help you. And probably I would add to that is jump into the Psalms and begin to pray the Psalms. There's so many good Psalms that have, dear God, I need you sort of
Yeah.
cry and a wailing almost in them of, Lord, where are you? Have you forsaken me? I would say, look, if you're finding that struggle with scripture and prayer, just even to sit in a cafe and read through the Psalms and just pray them. Just pray them under your breath in a cafe or on a walk. Listen to the Psalms, or get into a room somewhere in the house before you go to bed or early in the morning, whatever you prefer, and just let the Psalms kind of wash through you as a prayer, not as a biblical reading, but as a prayer. And I think you'll
Right.
find that sense of fresh connection to the Lord.
Yeah.
Steve, what a
Yeah.
great conversation. I just love the way
Thanks,
that
John.
you share your journey, and I think so many people will be helped
Thank
through
you.
this connection today. And thanks for jumping into the convo.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be able to share some of my story. And if we help just one, then it's been absolutely more than worth the time together. So thanks
Yeah,
for having me.
totally. God bless you, folks.